Heddel team is a team of 5, closing over 300 transactions per year with no bought leads, no hundreds of thousands of dollars spent on billboards and marketing, but by nurturing their database and one super innovating strategy that brings in 20 to 25% more business every year from cold leads. And let me tell you, it's pretty incredible. Mike Heddel, the team leader of Heddel team, is going to give you all of these details that you need to know about these incredible scaling strategy and the 5 things you need to know about it in terms of ROI on organic growth. Mike is highly analytical, so you will be witnessing his entire back-end blueprint of lead follow-up SOPs, as well as all the incredible benefits that you get from building a proper CRM. I'm really incredibly excited to bring you this video, so let's dive in. If you receive some valuable insights during this training, leave a comment below. I would love to hear what was your biggest takeaway. And if you're looking for more lead generating ideas, don't forget to subscribe.
A little bit of a setup here. How's that?
Yeah, perfect.
That looks okay. Good. Okay, so I'm going to share, kind of, we're very systemized at Heddel Real Estate. I grew up and spent way too much time in school to be a realtor. I have 3 degrees, one in economics, one in commerce, and one in engineering. So I like systems, and I'm not sure. I think at the end of this, we'll kind of open up for some Q&A, and I can dive deeper into any of these topics that we chat about. But I'm going to talk about a bit of a systemized approach to closing more, specifically in today's, challenging economy and challenging market. So I'm going to start by lightening this a little bit and sharing that looks like some of you also grew up in the 1980s, as I see some faces here. And I'm going to say 3 things prepared me in the 80s to thrive in this current market. The first of those 3 things was growing up with these iconic movies and quotes. And that's allowed me to build what I'd call taking from a sales to a service real estate model. And we often talk about a consultant's approach. So the 80s were a time, an incredible time, and they were known for fashion such as big hair, terminology like preppies. It was a time of no internet. It was a much simpler time without ChatGPT and Google. And it was a period that had these iconic movies that created these iconic, everlasting quotes like "E.T. Phone Home" or "Who you gonna call, Ghostbusters?" To connect with friends and family in this era, we had to either be face-to-face with them. There was no internet. There was no texting. There was no DMing. We had to pick up the phone to build a relationship. And I grew up in a family of physicians, a little bit of my background. My father was a surgeon, and my grandfather was a family doctor. My mother was in medical research, and my grandmother was a nurse. And this was all in an era where there was no internet or self-diagnosis. There was no Google to fact-check anything, or no ChatGPT to lead us down the path. It was a time that doctors were treated as skilled professionals and respected consultants or advisors in our community. And this had a significant impact on me, and it's lasted throughout my career. I hated being called a salesperson, and I obtained my broker's license as quickly as I could so that I could follow this family tradition as being a trusted advisor within our community. And it's always been important to me to treat this real estate practice as such, not a sales role, but a role of consultation. And we often deal with the public's largest assets, whether it's their matrimonial home, a recreational home, or we do a lot of investment real estate. So I'm going to share with you a visual here that took me a long time to kind of prepare as we got into building CRMs. So it was 2012 that we introduced our first CRM, and there weren't as many CRMs as there are today. And I refer to this as our business model. And this is your business model, whether you're a team of 50 brokers or sales partners and staffing, or whether you're a solopreneur. And essentially, we all take leads in from these various sources. So, things like new home sales sites, realtor.ca, open houses. We've got institutional relationships. We work with large investment networks, your center of influence, or any referral business. So we take these leads into our system, and they should sit in this bucket that we call a lead stage. And our job as salespeople is to determine which bucket they fall in once we communicate with a possible prospect. The first bucket there I refer to as the trash or the asshole bucket. 1% of the population I just don't want to deal with. I don't want my sales partners working with them. We just put them into trash as soon as possible. The next bucket, as a lead comes in, we refer to as a dead lead bucket. And these are leads that, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our service plan, that people just don't respond. You know, they make an inquiry on a property, or you get them into your CRM, and they're just not active. They're not responding to your phone calls or your emails. We keep them in that dead lead bucket so that we have a pool to always foster and try and warm up. The third bucket there is our nurture bucket, which is anyone that's looking to buy or sell within 3 to 6 months, or sorry, 3 to 12 months. And of course, we want to work with our hot prospects, those that are ready to purchase or sell within 0 to 3 months. And then our model should take those hots and turn them into active clients through buyer representation or listing agreements. And once we sell those clients a property or get their listing sold, they become a pending client. And of course, a past client once they're closed. And this small cycle here of, you know, nurtures to hot to active to past, that Pareto's principle suggests that 80% of our business should come from that area. So that area, we want to have really strong scripting, really strong CRM plans, but also our marketing systems should be really focused on turning past clients into referring people and nurture leads. And the other area of our business that we should all really focus on is that inflow, those new leads. So I'm going to show an example here of our CRM and how we use, for example, our new home model or plan. So within the new home system, we've got 3 ways in which a lead could come into our system. They might call into the office, and we have a Google form in which our administrative team would put all of the contact information in. So that would be a call in, and they would come to the sales partners as a team. They might make an online inquiry. So that would be the second way that they could come into the system. And the third would be they'd come into a sales center, like an open house. And each stage of our CRM identifies the source. So if they came in from a call, our action plan is going to be slightly different than if they came in through a walk-in, an open house. And this is just an example of our 26 steps over 28 days. That's a requirement for our sales team to contact that lead, to convert them into determining whether they're a trash, a nurture, a hot, etc. So if anyone wants to take a screenshot of that, I would encourage you to. You know, if you're using a system like Follow Up Boss, which is what we use, there is our map, and you'll see those are all field agent tasks to follow over those 28 days. Did I hear a comment there?
Sorry to interrupt you. Is this in Follow Up Boss? Is this?
It is in Follow Up Boss. that is the CRM
okay.
we use.
Yeah.
I cut out there. Was that the end of the question?
Yes. I was wondering if this is in a screenshot of your Follow Up Boss, so everybody can use whatever.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll give more insight. We built out the plans just in a Google Sheet. So this isn't a screenshot of a Follow Up Boss. This is just a screenshot of those action plans. And so you should take this and design your plan within Follow Up Boss, you know, at day 1, a call, at day 1, an email. And you'll see that there's about 5 emails in there. So take a screenshot. And why don't I open up at the end if anybody wants to dive in deep into any of these components, okay, just for the sake of time. So we then take that lead, and as I mentioned earlier, we determine whether that lead, once we get them on the phone, we're supposed to determine whether they're a nurture, a hot, a trash, a dead, and that sales process, we would then take them through that entire sales process, active client, etc. The next example I'm going to show in our new home plan, and these are all tasks you'll see within Follow Up Boss, and I'm going to dive deeper because it sounds like there's going to be some interest as to how we built out Follow Up Boss, is each step of the sales process, we would have all of these tasks that are created for you know, the sales team, you know, if you're an individual agent, for yourself, but as you've scaled, you'll see our team has, marketing role and an operations role, an administrative role, and sales partners role. So you'll see here as we move the sales cycle through conditional and pending and closed, we of course have some additional tasks there that are populated for the various roles on the team. And again, I'll let anyone I'll pause there for a screenshot. So we've taken the CRM through real automations, and I'm happy to dive deep at the end as well. As we take, this is just an example of our buyer deal flow. Once we determine that we're going to set an appointment with a buyer, our objective is to try and have that buyer show up, and we track if that buyer was met. So we would drag the lead through this deal flow. Our goal after that buyer consultation is to obtain the mandate to represent the client under a buyer representation agreement. So we would then, have a buyer contract stage. Once they've purchased an offer or purchased a property or submitted a conditional offer, that would be our next stage, followed by a pending stage, and then of course a passed stage or closed stage. I'm going to share with you all here, and you'll probably find more value because I'm just touching on some topics here with one of our mapping tools. So we found that there was a lot of interest as I was presenting some of this information. So what we've put together here is what we would call our CRM mapping. I've identified here all of the sources that we use, so breaking down the business into sources, and then all of the tags that we use within our CRM. And of course, we use Follow Up Boss as our CRM. So I'm going to encourage those of you that are attending now, or those of you that may watch, I'm pausing here so that you can screenshot that and just receive our CRM mapping tool. Next, I'm going to move on to kind of the second topic here of how the 80s prepared me to thrive in not only today's market, but strong sellers markets. And if you haven't picked up yet, we really have honed in on analyzing data and building a data-driven foundation. So this is the first photo that I can remember of myself. And this photo has a lot of significance to me and my family. It says the one and only. And I attribute those overalls and that saying to this no limiting belief system that I've got. I dare you to tell me I can't do something. Like, I will never give up, and I will continue to try and find a solution to any problem. And the 80s also had these other iconic sayings like Nike's "just do it." It was the invention of the Rubik's Cube, which still stands today as having conferences on speed tests. We introduced fantastic gaming systems, Pac-Man, for example, which now leads to all of our consoles. And of course, the 80s was the invent of the Mac, the ultimate data decision or data analyzing tool. So I'm going to dive into what I believe sales partners need to know. And it's a lot. And this is why I believe that team is the way that our industry will continue to go. On our team, these are all the things that our sales partners need to practice on and continue to hone in their skills. And they're things like the buyer's plan, which includes a buyer presentation or scripting for each of those stages. Of course, the listing system, which includes scripting as inbound calls come in, listing presentations, very professional and design listing presentations, how to host an effective open house. And something that we're seeing in today's market when properties aren't selling very quickly is how to perform a 30-day market review with your seller. Of course, we need to understand how to handle offers and negotiations, the principles and policies and procedures of not only the team, but the brokerage and the industry. We go through annual goal setting and also quarterly reviews. In fact, I could touch our we've broken down our reviews with our sales partners into weekly check-ins for accountability. We have to know as salespeople skill development, our performance and audit systems. But I think one of the most important tools that will assist us moving forward is property valuation. And property valuation, as many of you may know, there's 7 different ways to appraise a property. And I believe what we saw during COVID was a lack of professionalism and proper property valuation. And some of you may remember, if you were representing sellers, when you got an offer, there was a handful of offers on the table, and the majority of those offers were all around market value. And then one of them might have been low or really low, but there was one that was so much stronger than all the others that it was a no-brainer. In fact, we often saw that successful bid 5 or 10% above the balance of the majority of those offers. And I believe that led to a little bit of this bubble. And I believe ultimately it fell on us as licensed professionals. I think some of the public was misguided. And I'll take a pretty firm stance on that because we dive deep when we prepare property valuation. So as I started by saying, there's 7 different types of appraisals. And I shouldn't be telling anybody anything new, but I'm going to dive deep and try and give you guys some additional value. There's the direct comparison approach or income approach, the market adjustment or cost approach. Royal LePage on its national website has an automated valuation tool. I would encourage any of you to use that, whether you work with Royal LePage or not. You can look at a tax differential. And I'm going to share a quick story with you that really happened to me during COVID. Early days of COVID, we decided to take the girls out for ice cream. And my youngest daughter, as we got in the car, looked at my dashboard and she said to me, "Daddy, what does that symbol mean on your dashboard?" To which I responded, "You've got all these symbols. You know, which symbol are you referring to, dear?" Her answer was the one with the man flying through the air trying to bonk his head on the cell phone. And as you can imagine, we all burst into laughter. I don't think I will ever look at a USB symbol the same way again. And it always appears to me as a man flying through the air trying to bonk his head on an iPhone. And I think the reason that I share this cute story is that it's confusing out there. Whether it's valuation or market conditions, there's a lot of symbols or knowledge that's being shared that's very confusing. And I believe our job as consultants is to decipher that information and present it to the public as consultants and professionals. So you guys, are much like myself, are probably asked this question. In fact, I'm asked this question every day of the week. How is the market? And inevitably, what the public is asking when they ask this question is, are we in a buyer's market? Are we in a balanced market? Or are we in a seller's market? And I'm going to show some examples, and this goes back to last fall that I pulled some of these slides from. But in September 21st, you'll see I think this was the Globe and Mail, indicating that Toronto's real estate market has suddenly shifted to an official buyer's market. And will price drops be next? Just a few days later, we saw a similar publication indicate that the market has cooled and it's still a seller's market. And that's just to illustrate how confusing the media can make it to our public, to the public. And it's our job to determine what's going on. And I'm going to dive into what I call our market intelligence tool. And these are just, again, some statistics in our local board, Hamilton. I'm a Hamilton broker. In September of 2022, we saw about 400 sales, 447 sales, 1,500 active listings, 3.4 months of inventory. And year over year, as we go back to last fall, we saw relatively sales down. We saw active listings up, which is probably comparable with a lot of your markets. And the public often wants to know what's going on with price. And price is not the market indicator. Price is a suggestion of perhaps, where most homeowners equity might stand. But to determine the market condition, we should be looking at the tool of months of inventory. And I believe this is as I suggested earlier, the market intelligence tool. It is the tool that you should be reporting to your clients on a weekly or monthly basis, because it is the tool that determines what type of market we're in. And just to make this really simple for those of you that maybe don't calculate this on your own, it's a straightforward calculation. You take the active number of listings divided by the number of solds that took place that month will give you the absorption rate, or how quickly inventory is being absorbed. And you'll see that in this time frame in our market, we saw months of inventory slip from 3.4 to 4.5. And the reason I focus so much on this market intelligence tool is it is the tool that helps us, if we're working with sellers, understand why their listing is lasting a little bit longer. Or if we're working with buyers in a really strong market, understand as to why there might be so many offers on the market. It determines supply and demand. And anything between 0 to 4 months of inventory is defined as a seller's market. And as we go from 4 to 6 months of inventory, that's defined as a balanced market. And from 6 to 10 months, or 6 above, is defined as a buyer's market. And you'll see, as you look at this trend, this graph of months of inventory over a 10-year cycle in our marketplace, policy and the government can have an impact, as we've recently seen with the interest rates. But if we go back to 2017, we'll see that policy has an impact on absorption rates or consumer confidence or months of inventory. So when the government announced the Fair Housing Plan back in the spring of 2017, look at the impact it had on that graph. We went from a very strong seller's market, roughly 1 month of inventory, up to about 3 months of inventory. And every time we've seen some of these fiscal policy, or in this next example, the state of emergency, when we went under lockdown in COVID, of course, we had a strong impact on absorption rates or the strength of the market. And I've put a couple of other indicators in there, like when we started to see those consecutive interest rate hikes, we continue to see the market soften. And as we paused on those interest rate hikes, the market strengthened. And as we continue to see those 9 consecutive interest rate hikes, that had a significant impact on softening the market. So why is months of inventory important? I'm going to just lay over, again, that 10-year graph to illustrate how predictable that market used to be. If you look at the left-hand side of that graph, look how predictable that is. Like, that's very cyclical. And every spring, we see that graph drop, which means we're moving into a stronger seller's market. So every spring, the market strengthens. Every summer, the market softens. Every fall, the market would strengthen. And every winter, the market would soften. And you'll see that this is very predictable as you lay it over, period after period over the last 15 or 20 years that we've gathered data here in the Hamilton board. And as we hit to COVID, we saw something interesting change. We saw this irrational, strong seller's market that lasted an unpredictable amount of time. It wasn't cyclical like we've seen in the past. And really the contributors to that were a number of things in our market. Like, we saw this mass exodus out of the major metropolises, Toronto. We saw ultra low interest rates. So there's a lot of buyers that could get into affordability. And as we got into what I'll call these consecutive interest rate hikes, we've seen the market continue to soften. The other reason that months of inventory is an important tool is it does have a direct correlation with pricing. So when we lay over months of inventory and average price, you'll see as the market strengthens or we head into a strong seller's market, we see price increase quite dramatically. The stronger that pressure to a seller's market, you see that big bump up in pricing. And the inverse is true. When we saw those points like interest rate hikes or the state of emergency lockdown, there's a direct correlation to price. So as a consultant, how could this be helpful for you to guide your clients? As we sit today in this strong or balanced or buyer's market, it's a great opportunity for us to represent buyers where we can include conditions and so on and so forth. The other illustration I want to kind of point out is we still, at this time frame as of last fall, we were still 34% higher in average price than pre-pandemic pricing. So as you look at kind of this trajectory, I've graphed this myself, we're actually on a very relative trajectory of pricing. What we saw during COVID, at that peak of COVID, had a real strong impact on this bubble, if we want to refer to it as a bubble. And I talked about valuation being one of those contributors. Next, I'm going to talk very quickly about what I call the leading indicator. And I'm just going to walk you all through something that's very obvious to us, but not often the public. In order for us to get a sold sign on your lawn, I've got to generate offers. And in order for me to generate offers, I've got to generate showings. So showings is the leading indicator to getting property sold. And in fact, one of the neat things that came out of COVID was, for the first time, I've been doing this almost 20 years, I've never had access to buyer demand. We often report in lagging metrics, like last month's average price was X, or last quarter we saw sales do this, but we've never had a metric that indicates where we're heading. And whether you're using showing time or in our office we use Broker Bay, we now have the ability to track showings, the number of showings that are booked, and that is the leading indicator, in my opinion. I'm going to just show a quick layover, and this might not be very bright for everybody, so I'm happy to send these slides out, Andrea, if we need to. But this first graph just shows new listings, and much like absorption rates in months of inventory, listings typically follow the seasonality chart. So in the spring, we typically see more listings. In the summer, things tend to slow down. We often see a pickup in the fall, followed by the winter. We typically see, less inventory out there. And again, this is quite predictable: spring, summer, fall, winter. As we lay over, the importance here of seasonality is buyer demand. So what you see here in the blue line is our showing trends as of about the COVID timeframe is when we started to pull that 2019. And when we lay these two graphs over one another, essentially what we're looking at is supply and demand. Blue represents the number of showings taking place, and orange represents the number of new listings. And we started tracking this being a data-driven. I'm illustrating the point of what data, how data can help predict and guide your clients. During the COVID markets, we saw new showings outpace the number of new listings quite significantly. And in about April, we saw those two lines intersect. And as a team, we started watching, going like, something's happening here. And we started to advise our sellers to really price sharp, to not hold for multiple offers. And as time, kind of rolled out, April really tended to be that flip of inventory or supply and demand. And as you look at these two graphs now, there are some periods where we've gone through such a large delta of the number of new listings versus the number of buyer demand that's out there. So how do we use this internally as consultants? And I hope I'm speaking all of your language as I show you this data. We do a couple of things. I'm going to show you here an illustration of our comparative market analysis. So of course we use, I'm going to just start that and play. Of course we use the direct comparison approach, where we're looking at actives and solds. And I think that's a very, fantastic tool that we're all trained on as realtors. But being consultants, we dive a little bit deeper. We dive into all 7 of those opinions of value. So we look at a cost approach. We look at a market adjustment. We look at, MPAC's AVM residential report. And of course, we look at the Geo Warehouse report to analyze demographics for a neighborhood, sales trends, average price within the neighborhood. Pardon me. But we also dive into market conditions. So we look at what's trending with this supply and demand line so that we can predict where we're headed. And we also look at, months of inventory, average price. So we use those to help educate our buyers and our sellers as to what type of market we're in. The other thing that we do, and I think this is a very useful asset that I'm willing to share, every Friday we put out a weekly update to our clients. So we got to a point where we just got so busy, servicing clients. And some of my dialogue is often like, I can call you every day to tell you there's no activity on your listing if that's what you'd like, but that's not the best use of my time. The best use of my time is speaking to other brokers, speaking to other buyers to try and get as many eyeballs on your listing as possible. So every Friday we put together a real detailed market update report where we talk about how much activity is taking place on the listing, but also some of those leading indicators. So I'd like to offer that to your audience here as well, Andrea. If you'd like to receive a copy to model or to see how we put out that weekly listing update, I'm going to pause there for a moment for your viewers here to download that or register for that, sign up for that, and we're going to send out an example of our weekly listing update, which is really formed on the foundation of data, analyzing data. Okay. Third, to keep this light, take us out of the data and to keep this conversation going in a storytelling fashion. Growing up in the 80s was a wild time. We had these iconic action heroes that actually still withstand, have passed the test of time and still stand today. And what I learned from them was to have a profit-centric approach, which can alter your lifetime trajectory. And I'm going to talk a little bit at the end about giving back and leaving a legacy. So we had these amazing action heroes in the 80s, like Mr. T and the Terminator, of course, Conan the Barbarian and Rocky Balboa. And to me, there was none greater than the WWF heavyweight champion, Hulk Hogan. And when Thunder Lips threw Rocky Balboa over the top rope in Rocky 3, Hulkamania ran wild in my household. He was my hero, my idol. And in fact, this is the first time as I thought about telling a story and using this example, was really one of the first times that I realized I had this entrepreneurial spirit. I grew up probably like many of you, in a Southern Ontario neighborhood and home, with a lot of families and kids and working professionals. And we used to host these Hulkamania or WrestleMania events in my backyard. And we would go door to door selling tickets to all the kids in the neighborhood. So I thought it might be cute or fun to share one of my child home videos with your audience here, to just be completely vulnerable. I chuckle every time I see that. That is typical 1980s, like those big Coke cans that all the neighborhood kids are drinking are hilarious. So, so what I learned from the
I love that commercial with the Coca-Cola.
I'll pause for a moment. I think we chatted about this, Andrew, because we chatted in the fall. I lost my father last fall, and it was a great time to bring the family together and go through all of these childhood videos. And as we pulled some of those together, I was actually speaking a week later at one of Kathleen's events, and I thought, how could I not pay tribute to my youth and my childhood and promote Coca-Cola like the 80s used to? So what I learned from those heroes, those action heroes, were build a legacy. Great names, Sylvester Stallone 40 years later, or Arnold Schwarzenegger. So build a great brand, an impeccable brand, because I didn't want to be wrestling 40 years later. And so I built this, very unique business. Like everybody in this room, we've all got unique businesses. You won't drive through Hamilton and see any billboards. We've built a strong relationship-based business and referral-based business. And I highlight, 5 verticals of our practice that make my phone ring off the hook. We delve in residential resale, but we also, early in my career, I built a relationship with McMaster University. So we handle any new faculty member that comes to McMaster. We handle their relocation needs. We handle some new development with a builder where we've got exclusivity on master plan communities. We work with Scott McGilvery and his investment network called Keyspire. We're the first strategic partner in that group about 15 years ago. So I speak to the country's largest investment audience amongst that network. And a huge component of our business is referrals. And really what I wanted you guys to take away from some of this is, I love that saying, mind your own business, know what's going on in your business. So I've always been data driven, but having a team behind me here, at any moment I could tell you which partner is productive, which partner is hitting their KPIs by having the back end metrics within the business. So this is just one example of, we use this in a spreadsheet, a Google sheet, where we track everything, the source of the business, the splits, et cetera. And really the illustration is to showcase where our business comes from. And I like showing this slide to individual agents and also teams. I could not build, what you're looking at here is a distribution of our business. Anything in green is center of influence, and you'll see that sits at about 30%, 27% or something. I cannot build a large business by relying on COI only. In fact, it only represents about a third of what we do. Anything in blue or purple, you'll see there's, referring agents, the Keyspire network. We do some work with Hojo, strategic partners. Anything in purple is referral-based business. So that's people that are championing us, our advocates, whether it's agents or whether it's networks that we pay a referral fee on. So that represents about a third. And then the balance of the third is online and development. And as a lifetime investor, investor, I started investing at the age of 18. I love that I've got a very diversified business. So should investors, which they have, they've stopped transacting at the rate in which they once did. We've almost, recession-proofed the business by having such strong verticals within that business. And one of the things that we do with our sales partners is we analyze this and look at this on kind of a quarterly, where their business distribution is coming from. We use Follow-Up Boss, so I'm going to dive a little bit kind of deeper into the power of analyzing data. This is one of our sales partners that was with us, was with LePage actually. He decided to make a move to a more virtual boutique brokerage and really struggled for about 2 years. And fortunately, we were able to bring him back to LePage under a team model. And this was an agent that had about 15 years experience and was involved in our board. So not a new agent, very seasoned, but I just want to illustrate kind of the power of analyzing data and putting it in front of them. So in a time frame, I can't remember if we're looking at 6 months or so, we generated 312 leads, new leads. If we're able to have a small increase in conversion, like a 5% increase or conversion rate on those new leads, that puts another 15 deals into that partner's pocket. So by having systems, and primarily the CRM and the follow-up action plans, is designed to really increase your conversion rates. I've used this slide not to boast or not to illustrate, but we're a small team. We're members of the Realtors Association of Hamilton and Burlington. This is our top 10, and you'll see on our per capita, I've got 5 licensed agents. My agents are busy selling real estate. My agents, on average, we're doing 20 transactions per capita. And I'm really proud about that, because it means that my agents are in the trenches and they're honing in on those skills that we talked about earlier. I'm going to just shift for a moment to talk a little bit about, overarching and giving back. And I'll share with you our team's core values. And a number of years ago, it was probably about 10 years ago, we went through an exercise of identifying, like, who are we and what does it mean to be, on the Heddel real estate team. And we came up with these 5 values. And much like a house, the foundation is built on building strong relationships and excellent communication. And at the peak, we get great results and excellence for not only us, but our clients. But my favorite value is the one that lives in the middle. I call it the heartbeat of the Heddel real estate team. And that value is one of giving back. And I'm going to read that full value as we have all of these printed on our wall. It reads that we use our heart, our passion, and our laughter to give back to our clients, the communities we serve, and our teammates. We give more than we take in all aspects of our life. It is the core of who we are individually and how we are perceived collectively as a team. And that giving back is something that I think is truly part of my nature. I believe in order to have to be prosperous, or in order to have prosperity, you need to give more than you take in all aspects of your life. And I'm challenged on this often. But I believe in order for my bank account to be prosperous, I need to give more to it than I extract from it. I believe that for my health to be prosperous, I've got to give more to it than I take away from it. And I believe that for my relationships to be prosperous, I've got to give more to them than I extract from them. So we've built in a number of things within our practices. One of those love marks, I'll call them, is our post-sale process. So we've aligned ourselves with Roy LePage. We are very brand focused, and the brand has what they call the Roy LePage Shelter Foundation, and we contribute a portion of all of our real estate commissions back to the shelter. We do a number of other events throughout the year, but we put out a communication that this isn't public facing. So what I'm about to share with you guys is what our clients receive. And we try to change that story or that narrative to make the client the hero. So you'll see, they get this email, and I thought that it's worthwhile maybe just sharing that video with you. Can you guys hear everything? Could you hear that past video?
Yep. And the video is
Okay.
on and off, but we do hear most of it.
Okay, Andrea, if you don't hear, would you interrupt me? I might not have toggled off sound, so I may restart, but it's worth having the sound here, okay? So just interrupt me if you don't hear any sound. Sound starts almost at the beginning.
At the Heddel Group, it has always been our inclination to give back. As one of our core values, we use our heart, passion, and laughter to give back to our clients, the communities we serve, and our teammates.
We give more than we take in all aspects of our life. It is the core of who we are individually and how we're perceived collectively as a team.
We at the Heddel Group, we're the top 1% realtors within Royal LePage Canada. We help buyers and sellers in Hamilton and surrounding areas with their real estate needs. We try to do it while creating an experience that they want to tell their friends and family about as well.
We contribute a portion of every real estate commission back to the women's shelter, and we also have some pretty unique fundraising throughout the year.
The Shelter Foundation, they're Canada's largest public foundation. They're dedicated exclusively to helping women's shelters and violence prevention programs, and they help abused women and children lead safer and happier lives.
Some of the unique things about the shelter is because they're an organization, a charity that's involved within the brokerage can absorb all of the costs. So 100% of every dollar earned within the foundation makes its way down to the charity, which not a lot of charities can say.
Being a mother of one, almost two, like I couldn't imagine being in that situation and feeling helpless or feeling like I had no option. And the fact that there is that outlet for people, I think the importance behind it is unprecedented.
Everyone thinks there's a stereotype to an abused woman, and there's not. The Shelter Foundation takes in any female, single mother, children, and takes them out of a situation. They shelter them, they feed them, they give them a sense of security. There's just so much to it.
The foundation is the largest charity in Canada focused on eradicating violence from our communities and supporting the women and children who fall victim to it.
One thing that I'd like all of our clients to know is that by purchasing their home or selling their home with us, they are doing good for their community. They are helping save lives.
I'd like to thank you for placing you and your family's trust in us with the sale of your home, as by doing such, it allows us to serve our families, your families, the neighborhoods that we serve, and the communities that we help build. So as I mentioned there, that's an asset that we don't market online. The public doesn't see any of that. That to us is an asset that we try and make the client feel like the hero throughout the process. So on that note, I think it's kind of worth, I want to be mindful of our time here because I really want to open up to some Q&A. So I want to lead the conversation, but I'm an open book. Let's open up to Q&A, and if anybody has any questions about anything, I'm happy to share.
If anybody has any questions, I know it's 10 o'clock and usually we try to stay within the time. But I have a quick question for you. The tracking of all of your team efforts, you had a slide at some point that shows a lot of data of your performance. Is it done in Follow-Up Boss?
Yeah. So I'll share because I actually don't talk a lot about that in this chat this morning. We started to watch different key performance metrics, and I've had a team for, I don't know, 2012 is when the team started. And the frequency also became very challenging in determining like what do salespeople, how accountable do they want to be held to things? So early in the career, we started doing quarterly meetups. We then went to monthly with myself and the sales partner, and they just turned into complaining everything that was wrong. So where we land today is we do weekly tracking and weekly check-ins, and they're performed by my operations manager. So she meets with the sales partners every Friday for a 15-minute check-in. She sweeps their Follow-Up Boss to make sure that no lead has been forgotten, so that nobody has been, no lead slips through the system, which is important. She focuses more on them. What do they need? And how many appointments have they set? So we do talk about the KPIs, sets, METs, contract. That's one of the measurables that we look at. We also look at the conversions. We do a lot of online conversions. So average time to respond, average contact attempts, follow up. Those are the big two.
But
average contact attempts and
as a system,
lead.
everything happens in Follow-Up Boss, right? In your CRM. Yep.
So let me elaborate a little bit on that. We track from from the CRM. So that's where we can see how quickly we responded, how many calls were made. But Brittany has devised her own spreadsheet to cross-reference these metrics. So unfortunately, we've been using Follow Up Boss since 2017. It's an amazing CRM, but like today's day and age, it's not the best for everything. So we extract from.
What is she using as what is she using as a system? Just a spreadsheet?
It's in a Google Sheet. We've devised a Google Sheet so that I've got a dashboard that I can see where we're standing on that.
Got it. Okay. And another question that I have, you showed this beautiful, very detailed market analysis that you sent to your clients or you take with you when you presented. What software are you using for that? Is it just because I saw that it's almost turns like a page, but where do you create it?
Oh, I think what you're asking about is our CMA there, right? Where I scan through the pages. Yep. So that's created within the first component of that's created within Matrix. Like there's no one-stop solution in real estate, unfortunately. I've never found it. I've looked for it and it doesn't exist. So the comparables are pulled from our Matrix system. The appendices are pulled from a customized spreadsheet that all the sales partners use. So you do have to pull a number of systems or outputs into Issue. So what you saw there was just a flip book, or we use Issue there. And we use that when we're delivering the CMA to the client electronically, but we still like to get face-to-face. So we've got a hardcover listing presentation, beautifully branded and high-end materials, because I think this is still a face-to-face business. But we do a lot of referral business. So as you can imagine, having that technology, we publish it in Issue. I thought you were asking about our weekly update. So that weekly update is created in a combination probably of Canva to extract some visuals and MailChimp. And then we've got all of the smart lists within the CRM so that we understand who should be receiving what communications.
Got it. Now, one question that came to me from our in-person event, I know you're sending deal of the month, a deal of the week to your clients, right? I think at the time you were mentioning of how we can get a glimpse of how that looks like. And I don't know, it just got lost in the event, and people were asking, how can we get more information on that?
Yep. So can you I'm going to try and pull up in live time. Let's see how good I am at this. So can you clarify the question a little bit? Do you want to see a visual of the deal of the week? Or maybe for this audience, I should start with presenting what that is. Okay, so I've left that out of kind of our talk here today. In 2014, we started working with the country's largest investment network. And it was at Christmas time that I recognized, I've got to put this in front of them on a silver platter. Like, we've got such a big audience now, and people don't want to analyze or run numbers. So how can I put in front of them something on a silver platter? I use the analogy, I think, at your event. If I invited you into my home and we were sitting in my den and I said to you, I've got one of those tubes of chocolate chip cookies in the fridge. Do you want me to go put some chocolate chip cookies in the oven? You'd say, don't worry about it, Mike. But if I walked from the kitchen with a warm plate of chocolate chip cookies and put them in front of you, they'd probably be irresistible. You'd have a tough time not taking one. We use that same analogy into our deal of the week. So each week we analyze the best investment properties in Hamilton, Brantford, and St. Catharines, and we put them out in a communication that we call our deal of the week. And if anybody's in front of their computer, they can go to www.dotw.ca, dealoftheweek.ca, and subscribe to it. And it's a beautiful output. You've been receiving it, Andrea. So we put together, as the MailChimp lands, we break down the 3 best properties in those 3 markets. And if the investor wants more information, we use a very standardized template and visual to break down, what I'll call the 4 fundamentals. So the 4 fundamentals of investing in real estate are cash flow. How much how much cash does the property yield in a positive cash flow? That's number 1. Number 2 is principal recapture. how much of that mortgage is paid down by your tenant over a 12-month time frame. So that's fundamental number 2. And then fundamentals 3 and 4 are chunk them together as appreciation, but we break them out into passive appreciation or active appreciation. So if our investor is looking to force some appreciation and renovate, we can estimate that return. Or if the market goes up 2%, we can estimate the overall rate of return. So it's a really nice visual so that investors can just, look at 10 opportunities and compare them all based on some data-driven capacities. Now, I'm going to share, because I think this is really important, and I know, Andrea, you use CRM. We went through a period where the first 21 weeks we sold that property every Friday. I'd struck gold. We thought, oh my gosh, we're really onto something special. And the network started, and even agents started to say, like, just get on Heddel's deal of the week. Like, he does all the heavy lifting for us. He analyzes the properties. So we would have clients working with other brokers on our deal of the week, and then they would call their broker or they would call the listing agent and go negotiate the deal with them. We've got about 20,000 people that subscribe to our deal of the week weekly, both agents and the public investors. So we kind of sat down and audited and decided, like, well, what are we doing here? Do we care? At first, we didn't really care, but then we decided there was a great opportunity, and that opportunity presents itself in terms of the close. So our clients get a sneak peek of the deal of the week 5 days before the mass is due. So we tiered our deal of the week. So on Mondays or Sundays, our clients get a sneak peek of the deal of the week, and the public gets it on Friday. And you might say, well, why would you do that? That's a lot more work. You can back this up to our discovery call. I'm meeting with you, Andrea, as our investor, and I'm determining what your needs are. And then I go for my close, which is, let's talk about representation. In order for me to represent you, we've got to talk about fiduciary duties and a buyer representation agreement. We ask for that at the earliest available opportunity. Now, most investors would say something like, I'm going to work with the agent, whoever brings me the deal. To which my objection handle or response would be, that's great, that's fine. I'm going to put you on our deal of the week. We've talked about it, but our clients get to see the good stuff first. So if there's any leftovers, I'm happy to bring you the leftovers. And if you want to see the leftovers, you'll get it on Friday after our clients have had an opportunity to sift through all the good stuff. Now, no investor wants the leftovers. That means that's something that nobody else wanted. So it drives that decision for the investor to make a commitment to working with us, and having a real robust CRM gives us the ability. Remember, I showed that chart of the stages, so nurture, hot, active, so on and so forth. We extract from our database, show me all contacts that are buyers or investor, and show me all contacts that are active clients. So when you've got a real strong CRM, you can extract from the CRM the audience that you're looking to hit for any communication. And that's how we use that within the deal of the week.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Mike. I think anybody that wants to be on that list and get the leftovers, but at least